coming up on Wrestling Life.
And I had no clue where I was at. I just like got up and I was just like, oh my God. And Jackie came over. She's like, Storm, you okay? I was like, keep him away from me. Like, I don't know where I am. And you see her just like take Chris away. She's like, give him a second. Like, she's beating him up or whatever. And Rudy, the referee, comes over. He's like, you okay? I was like, I don't know what, you know, and I was like, what's the next spot? And so he talked to Chris. And then as soon as I got that next spot, then I was okay to go. But I had to go and get 4 staples put in the back of my head. And no one ever knew. Then I had to come back on Monday and Tuesday night to wrestle on Impact shows.
Oh.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the only place for real talk from real talent. Joining me in the studio today is a very special guest that I've wanted to have on this show for a long, long time, and we are finally making it happen today. My guest has had an incredible career inside the wrestling ring, and he's now living the second chapter of his life, as we'll talk about today. He's a TNA original, a former TNA world champion. He was one half of not one, but 2 of TNA's most influential tag teams. And he really has seen and done it all in this wild wrestling business. He's famous for saying, sorry about your damn luck, but today I feel extremely lucky and grateful to welcome him to Wrestling Life. My guest is, of course, the one, the only. It is the Cowboy, James Storm. James, how are you, my friend?
Man, we need to start getting you to be introduction at wrestling shows, man. That's a good introduction there. That's better than JB can do.
I'm working on it. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really well. I'm so glad we've managed to make this happen. Recording this just before you're coming over to the UK. It feels like you're here quite a lot these days.
Man, and the funny thing is I like all the interviews I've done. Like, you can go back and look. I always say my favorite place to wrestle is in the UK, just because I mean they still get it. You know, they show up and they don't try to overtake shows and stuff. Like they understand the baby face and the heel, and they yay and boo everybody, and it just makes for a better performance of the guys in the ring. Right. When they know their job as well. Plus, they're half drunk like I am too. So so that works out great.
I mean, it goes back to like the 60s and 70s when wrestling was the biggest thing on our TV, and it was like proper family, appointment viewing. You had to watch World of Sport on a Saturday afternoon. And I think, that's still kind of imbued in a British culture. But then, of course, the other thing is we're so starved of live wrestling over here. Like, it's a lot better than it used to be, but yeah. If a big star from the States comes over to the UK, it's still a really big deal.
And I just have so much fun. I was over not to go for WAW, WAW, and I love wrestling with those guys and the Knights and stuff. And it's just so much fun. But I remember being there and the referee actually coming up to me going, "Oh, we're going to wrestle by English rules." I'm like, I didn't even know they had different rules. Like, all the years I've been coming here, she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to wind up like losing because I don't know what any of these rules are. They're like, you can't hit them when they're down. You can't do this. I went, you might as well just DQ me back here. But lucky I was able to get it changed around. So
yeah, I see. Well, I want to ask you first out of the gate, like, we're recording this like not long after this huge news has dropped that's just come out of WWE. So this newly announced multi-year partnership between WWE and TNA. Now, you're someone who's obviously synonymous with TNA wrestling. You played such a big role in putting that company on the map. How did you feel when you heard that news?
I think it's great, especially for all the guys and girls that are with TNA at the moment, because, it's TNA is hard to find over here on, you have to have a certain subscription and everything. And so I think this is going to help draw way more eyeballs to TNA, which is really good for these guys and girls. And I mean, especially if they can interchange and go and wrestle for NXT as well. Yeah. Like, this is, as they say, this is the opportunity. Don't piss it away because, this opportunity might not come again. So take every advantage of it that you can.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's been positioned as a partnership, but do you think we'll ever end up with WWE buying TNA?
That's the theory going around. Is this is kind of as I say, like a toe in the water to see how it can go and stuff, and and I'm sure WWE would love to buy TNA just for the library. You have all the guys, when they were in their prime with the AJ and Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe. You have all these guys that were in the WWE now that they can show on the library, especially being on Netflix as well now. So, and I always say, look, hey, I was down there in NXT. I did 2 shows. I'm undefeated in WWE. So that could be a good storyline. I'm just throwing it out there.
what happened there? Because I remember you making your big appearance on NXT, and I did properly mark out. I was dead excited about that. You come on to NXT, get a couple of wins under your belt, felt like this was all beginning, but then you didn't actually sign with NXT. What happened there?
Yeah, and everybody thinks it's because of the money and all this, whatever. I'm one of the guys, like even Hunter told me, he goes, look, you won't be here long. He goes, Vince loves characters, and you're a character that can work, and you're great on the mic, so you won't be here long at all at NXT, which is fine. Like I wouldn't have mind wrestle at NXT because a lot of my friends were there as well, before they went to the main roster. But it was something where they sent me the contract first, and I ran through it and stuff. But when I got down there to talk to them about signing it, the dates had changed. It went to a lot more dates, which is fine or whatever. But at the time, me and my wife was trying to have a baby, and we had to do all this other stuff or whatever. And the dates just wasn't going to match up and stuff. And TNA was the way better option because they wasn't running, that many house shows and stuff at the time. It was all just TV and pay-per-views. And Hunter just told me, he goes, hey, just you never know one day down the line, just keep yourself in shape, and you never know what can happen. And it's just one of those things is where I don't know, like I've always kept myself in shape. And like I remember Jim Ross saying on his podcast, he goes, whenever you get the call, they're not going to wait for you to get in shape. Yeah. They want you ready to go. Mm-hmm. So that's and no matter what, even with me doing movies now, like if they hire me, I got to be ready to go because I'm filming this one movie where I got to take my shirt off, and the girl's like, "Ooh, I don't want to take my shirt off." The girl be like, "Oh," so I got to make sure I maintain that. So.
Yeah, and I mean, Motor City Machine Guns, obviously recently arrived on SmackDown, having a huge run there of the tag titles. I mean, it still seems quite surreal to me to see those guys in a WWE ring.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
When I saw them debut, it was just a big, congratulations to those guys because I worked with them for so long. And, even when I went back to TNA for a little bit, me and Chris Sabin tagged for a little bit in TNA. So it's just a big thing. And my whole thing is I'm not really looking for titles and all this stuff, whatever. I really kind of just want to go back and help a lot of the younger guys, like really learn how to wrestle on TV. Like a lot of these guys still don't know how to wrestle on TV and stuff. And I'll always tell people when I do seminars and stuff, I'm like, it's okay to still sell. like that's what makes you a huge star. I'm like, look at Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy does like 5 moves and then he gets the crap kicked out of him the entire match. But like everybody knows who Jeff Hardy is because that's made him like he's not afraid to sell. And a lot of people I think get, oh, I can't sell, blah, blah. Because I see people taking Canadian destroyers from the top rope and getting back up. I'm like, they'd have had to carry me out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got up.
And
it's just people just making sense of matches. And a lot of these seminars I do too, a lot of guys still don't even know how to lock up properly. Like they don't even know to put the hand behind the neck and why you cup your hand behind their neck. A lot of guys still don't understand that. They're just taught, lock up and go right into another move. So
it's that psychology, isn't it? I saw an indie spot recently of one guy was on top of another guy's shoulders, like Doomsday Device style, and then a guy jumped off and hit a Canadian destroyer from that height. And I mean, ridiculous, but also no doubt probably ended in a 2 count as well. It's just like
could you imagine this match, like if you were wrestling the Road Warriors and they had you up and you're in the back, you're like, hey, will you give me that finishing move you do? I'm going to jump back up. What do you think would have happened? That would have been, no, you're not.
You'd have never made out of the locker room, would you?
Right. And a lot of these guys need to learn, like, and that's when, when I went down there, Hunter was asking me, he's like, hey, do you still use the super kick for the finisher? And that's what I used in my second match or whatever. And I was like, yeah. He goes, well, a lot of people, they use the super kick here or whatever. I was like, hey, that's fine. They knock people down. I knock people out with mine, and he goes, all right, you can use it. And that's what I always tell people is like, I've always protected it where I only throw it at the end, like when I'm going to beat somebody, a lot of people, they just throw it just to go into another spot or something. You never saw Jake Roberts, doing the DDT like 15 times in his match because he protected it. When you saw that, you knew that was it,
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a former guest of the show, RJ Singh, he's a veteran over here, has been wrestling for about 20 years in the UK. He has brought back the DDT as his finish. So 2 years ago, he said, I'm going to become the DDT king. And he makes the point that no one else on the show uses a DDT. It's not a transitional spot. It's his finish. If he hits it, it's a 3 count. And I think the same for the super kick. You can bring these moves back. It's you just have to protect them rigidly, don't you? And there's not enough of that anymore. And we need it because I think, we all grew up in the era of, less is more, I think, when it comes to wrestling. Yeah. And it just becomes.
And I'm not saying you can't do it. I mean, the Young Bucks made a living off of, being the super kick, doing the super kick party and stuff like that. And that's fine with them. But I always tell people, like, if you watch how they do it, they'll hit it and they'll go into another big move to put somebody down. They don't just hit it and then shoot somebody off, like they do it at a certain time and people think they just do it just to do it. It's like, no, there's a method behind their madness as well.
Yeah. Going back to the TNA thing, I mean, I really hope that personally WWE doesn't buy TNA outright because I think wrestling's always been at its best when there's been healthy competition. And also from a fan's perspective, the excitement of when will a TNA talent show up on NXT or in the Royal Rumble, vice versa, it just makes it far more interesting to have those different environments. But also, like, it feels like TNA is really finding its feet again after quite a long time when it had kind of gone off track a bit. And, its live attendance has gone up and putting on some great shows. And I just kind of want to see that trajectory continue. I mean, it's crazy. It's been 23 years since America's Most Wanted kind of appeared on that first ever pay-per-view back in 2002. I mean, going into those early shows, did you ever think that, TNA could have had a shot at lasting as long as it has?
Man, like every day that we went into the Nashville Fairgrounds back in those days on the Wednesday night pay-per-views, like we were afraid that it was going to be shut down. We were going to get there and the door was going to be locked. And, like to Jeff Jarrett's credit, like he did everything he could to keep it going. Like he was in there painting it himself, like him and his grandmother and family was in there, fixing all this stuff. And, he definitely put it on his back and did what he could to keep it alive. And, every single week, the internet be like, oh, they're only going to last this and this. And, here we are still, TNA still kicking along, and like I said, it's really good. And it just shows, especially the people behind the scenes, that have been doing a job to get TNA back on track.
I'm Marc Mero, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everyone wants it to succeed. I think, it's everyone really respects the fact that this, it's like the little promotion that could has lasted over 2 decades now. And it's incredible. and I'm loving seeing its journey now. But kind of going back to AMW, you and Chris Harris, I mean, that was over 4 years that you were together before kind of good friends turned bitter enemies in TNA. But there were quite a few times where it seemed like that team would implode before it actually did. I'm assuming the plan wasn't originally that you would be paired up as a tag team for quite as long as you were, or was it?
No, I think that they really just needed a tag team for the second show down in Huntsville, Alabama. And they were like, hey, how about we just throw these guys in there, and Bill, and it was, Bill Behrens, he was just like, we have these 2 guys from Nashville, and Bill knew who we were and stuff. And they just threw us in there. And I don't know, just something connected. And me and Chris have worked together a lot before, the AMW days. And so they just put us in there and was like, all right, let's make this work. And I always get asked this a lot. It's like, who do you think is better, Beer Money or AMW? And my answer is, with AMW, me and Chris had to rely on each other to make it, because we were basically unknown guys, trying to make it in this company where a lot of, WCW and WWE guys were coming and stuff. And so, like, it was easy to get lost in the shuffle because no one knew who we were and stuff. And lucky, we were from here in the Nashville area. So a lot of the fans knew who we were that were coming to the Wednesday night pay-per-views. They would bring signs. So we hung out all the time. I mean, we were like a legit brotherhood tag team. And whereas Beer Money, we were already established. We can go out there and just be more relaxed and, act as crazy as we wanted to. And it winded up getting over.
No, it really did. But I was going to ask you about AMW. I mean, you've had a few TNA returns over the years, and one of those was reuniting with Chris for the 1000th episode of Impact. I mean, that must have been a pretty incredible feeling to kind of see how far TNA had come since your debut all those years earlier and be part of that historic night.
Yeah, especially, being up in New York and, just being able to tag with him again at TNA was, it was really cool. And I just remember being on the outside and, just watching him do his, flying clothesline and stuff. And it brought back a lot of memories that night for sure.
I mean, you've obviously been asked by other people, who was better, AMW or Beer Money. But my question more is actually around how you spent so long as a tag team wrestler. Did you go into this business ever thinking you'd become so renowned with a tag team scene? Because I asked this question of Devon Dudley on the show, and he said that he always wanted to be a single star, whereas Bully Ray always really wanted to be in a tag team. I mean, were you singles first and tag teams just kind of happened?
Yeah, I thought I would, gonna go in and be a single star, and but I always grew up a tag team wrestling fan. With the Hart Foundations and the Rock and Roll Express, Demolition. Funny story with Demolition, real quick, is I was doing an indie show and we were supposed to be beat down, and then Demolition's music hits, comes out, saves us, or whatever. So I'm like laying there. And it hits. It's like, here comes the axe. And the referee comes over. He goes, Storm, are you okay? I was like, get away from me. Shut up. Just let me enjoy this moment. Like, it was just like, it took me back to being a little kid. I was just like singing every word to that song. Yeah. But I grew up a tag team wrestling fan. And so when they put me in these tag teams, I just made the best of it because I wanted to be part of the company. Like, if this is where I fit in, this is where I fit in. And I'm going to do the best I can to make it work. And a lot of people don't understand there is a science to doing tag team wrestling. You got so many guys these days that are just single guys, and they just get in there and just do single moves. Like they don't even try to do, tag team wrestling moves. They just get in there and just, as they say, do their own stuff and they get out. So.
Yeah, and also an art to, the presentation of a good tag team, as in we both grew up obviously in an era where it was, as you say, British Bulldogs, Heart Foundation, Demolition, Legion of Doom, Road Warriors, etc. Like proper teams that looked like a team, acted like a team, were kind of interchangeable to one another. And so that's what I love. You have America's Most Wanted, and then you have Beer Money again. So like this real identity built around a team. I've got to ask you, who came up with the name Beer Money?
Man, me and Bobby was actually sitting at this bar called the Ale House, or whatever, and we was all in the back corner just drinking or whatever, and like reached around my pockets, and I was like, man, I think I'm out of beer money. And Bobby just looked at me, and goes, I think you just said our tag team name. He goes, let's try it. And so we kept trying to use it, and they wouldn't let us use it. They kept calling us Rude and Storm. And so finally, we went to Mike Tenay. We're like, hey, man, do you mind helping us out? He goes, because he's the one that helped America's Most Wanted be able to start being called America's Most Wanted. And they were just calling Storm and Harris. And so Mike started saying beer money on the Impact shows or whatever. And then I had this dumb idea. I didn't even tell Bobby either. I made these like T-shirts up with like iron on that said beer money and had an arrow pointing down and said put tag team championships here. And when I was in the wardrobe, she was like, what are you doing? And I made it up. I was like, I'm just going to surprise him during one of our interviews. And so I was like, hey man, look, I got us our new merch. He's like, what? He like opened it up. He goes, looks like you made it. I was like, can you tell? I was like, they're awesome, right? Displaying on the character. He's like, yeah. And then after the interview, he goes, are we really going to wear these? I was like, yeah, man. And there's like I said, just plain white T-shirts that I cut the sleeves out of them and I just ironed on beer money on the front of it. Oh, and nobody said anything to us, so we just wore it out. And we both pointed to the name Beer Money, and then after that, they kept calling us Beer Money.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good name. But why do you think that the chemistry worked so well between you and Bobby?
I think because we were so different as people and performers. Bobby is a wrestling machine. Like he's unreal in the ring. Whereas me, I can wrestle, but I'm more the charismatic, like character type guy or whatever, that can do whatever, and that's just what made us like work so well, is because they're like, hey, you just go out and do you, Bobby, you go out and you be the wrestler of the group. So, yeah. So like I said, and we came up with the beer money suplex, and our opponents hated taking the beer money suplex, even though it was just a suplex, because when we hook them, the arms are like this and they're like stretched out, but you see a lot of guys on their tippy toes because they're putting a lot of pressure on them. They're like, just suplex it already. And I knew that we really had something when we were wrestling in London, and we were supposed to be wrestling the British Invasion. And we go out and wrestle them, and they start booing the British Invasion, and they start chanting for us. And we had it set up where British Invasion was going to be the baby faces, and we were going to be the heels. And we're like, all right, I guess we're calling everything in here, and we're going to switch everything around.
Yep. Us Brits, we love beer and we love money.
Yeah. So I remember, like, Doug was like, this is unbelievable. This is my home country. Why are they booing me? They never boo me.
Oh, man, I love that. There's someone else from your career I want to ask you about, because I feel like her contribution to wrestling has been really overlooked, and that's Jacqueline Moore. Like, obviously, Jackie was your manager for a good long time in TNA, and I've spoken at length with my good friend Marc Mero about his pairing with Jackie in WWE and how much he enjoyed working with her.
Yeah. Any
memories you can share of working with Jackie?
Man, like Jackie to me is like what a manager should be. Like, I mean, she's tough. Super. I mean, she's just fun to be around anyways. And you never have to worry about her not being in place for her stuff. Like she was always there. You never, with some tag teams or whatever, you're like, oh, they were off a second or whatever. And a second in the wrestling ring feels like 5 minutes. It's really weird, but it just does. But you never have to worry about her doing her stuff. And she's not afraid to get heat. Like she knows her job, especially as a heel manager, is to go out there and get heat, and she'll do whatever it is. And I just remember there's a match with me and Chris. It's the Texas Death Match, and Chris spears me off the ring, and I go through a table on the floor. Well, if you look, the back of my head hits the concrete, and it splits it wide open. And when they come back, there's blood. It's pouring out. It's like a puddle like this big. And I had no clue where I was at. I just like got up and I was just like, oh my God. And Jackie came over. She's like, Storm, you okay? I was like, keep him away from me. Like, I don't know where I am. And you see her just like take Chris away. She's like, give him a second. Like, she's beating him up or whatever. And Rudy, the referee, comes over. He's like, you okay? I was like, I don't know what, and I was like, what's the next spot? And so he talked to Chris. And then as soon as I got that next spot, then I was okay to go. But I had to go and get 4 staples put in the back of my head. And no one ever knew. Then I had to come back on Monday and Tuesday night to wrestle on Impact shows.
Oh. Is that the worst injury you've had from wrestling?
Well, when I was training to wrestle, I had a compound fracture in my right shoulder here with a bone. I didn't even know the bone was out of the skin until I turned. I couldn't pick it up, and I turned to look, and the bone was sticking out. I was like, oh, I got to go to the hospital. So I was out for like an entire year with that surgery, and I was supposed to start on Memphis television, which I grew up watching. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I get to wrestle in the studio at Memphis, and then they had shut it down. I was just like, it's like I really wanted to wrestle in the Memphis studio, just the studio atmosphere, because I always heard like Ricky Morton and all these guys talk about it. But luckily, like when I got to do some stuff with the NWA, they started doing stuff in a studio. And so I was talking to Ricky, and he was just like, yeah, he goes, this brings back so many memories, because we would walk out with no music or anything. You just go out to the ring, get in the ring. And it was a change, but it was really cool to be able to relive that,
Yeah, absolutely. You go from AMW to Beer Money, but in the middle bit, you obviously have a solid singles run there before being paired with Bobby. Were you reluctant to be back in a tag team when you were making good strides as a single?
Like I said, not really. I was wherever I fit it. And I think after the AMW, I wanted to be another tag team wrestler, but I just didn't want to form just a tag team, that gets thrown away or whatever, And the good thing about tag team wrestling is you only take half the bumps. so you can have a longer career. That's why I still feel really good, because, 90% of my career, I was in a tag team match. And so, I think what happened is me and Bobby was coming to the end of our contracts, and they didn't know what to do with us. And I think they were just going to, get rid of us. And Dutch Mantel said, well, hell, just put them together and, let them just wrestle with each other until their contracts expire. And then we just caught fire, and they had to re-sign us, and away we went.
And, you said early on, like TNA was obviously a hotbed for all of this kind of young up and coming talents, obviously yourself and Bobby and, AJ and Christopher Daniels and Joe. And, there's so much great homegrown talent that made TNA what it was. But then you were there as a TNA original, through many of the changes, including when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff kind of joined the company. How did that impact you and Bobby? And how did the TNA locker film generally feel to have this kind of, I guess it's almost like this WCW invasion for a period coming into the business?
It's people can always, they always have their different opinions of what they thought about when these guys came in and all this. But really, with any kind of change in management, you're going to have a shift in a direction, whether it be a new head coach coming into a football team, he's going to put his vision on it. It's probably not going to be the same vision as you were used to with the old regiment. And that's what happened. It's like you just had new guys come in, and they were putting their vision on it. But they also had guys that they had already worked with, that they knew what to do. They didn't know any of us really, when they came in. And so it was kind of, and that was one of the kind of things that kind of just bothered me a little bit, is I felt like we had to start proving ourselves again to these guys when, for the last 10 years, we've already proved ourselves to build to where we got. It's just like we needed that little oomph to get us over the hump. And I thought with Hogan coming in, that name recognition and all that stuff, that would, definitely help out stuff. And, and I think once one kind of chatter starts going, and then it is magnifies in the wrestling world. They're like, oh, well, they're not succeeding because of this. Oh, no, it's because of this. And then all of a sudden it just becomes he said, she said, and it's like, just leave me out of it. I just want to show up, do my job, and get the hell out of here.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think also when that happened, like, as a fan, like so many of us just loved the TNA product as it was. We got used to those characters and those talents. And it was a bit like, it was almost like an infusion of like lots of these names from yesteryear were suddenly part of a roster when actually the roster was solid.
I remember like Brian Knobbs, we had to wrestle the Nasty Boys, and Brian Knobbs came up to me and goes, wait, why aren't you guys doing a job to us? I was like, bro, I don't know. Like, they show me the paper and I go out and do it. Like, it is what it is. Like,
yeah.
That when I go to the bank, they don't ask me if I won or lost. They're just like, oh, okay, there you go. And the only thing I kind of regret is they took away the 6-sided ring. Like, I thought that was, I hated that ring, but it also gave TNA a different identity because people associated it. A lot. They're like, oh, that's the promotion with the 6-sided ring and stuff. And, that's the only thing I kind of, hate it.
How much harder was the 6-sided ring to work than a 4-sided ring? Because it feels like it'd be a logistical nightmare.
Oh, I'd rather bump on a concrete floor than a 6-sided ring. I mean, especially when you got out for the, the edges, like by the turnbuckles and stuff. I mean, it was just solid as can be, and I was just like, okay, I want to make sure I never bump here. And I always tell guys, especially when I'm doing seminars, they should have a ring mat that has like a circle around it that has like a 1, and then it goes out and says 2, and then a 3, and then out on the, ring aprons, it's like a 5 or whatever. And I say, that's how many years is taken off your bump card every time you bump in these different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you bump out here and it's just solid, you don't at the time you think it's cool, but that it has effects on your spine and your neck. Andy Douglas, who was part of the Naturals, he's actually a chiropractor here in Nashville now, a very successful chiropractor. And he was telling me that he studied it, with wrestlers. And every time we take a bump, it's like being in a head-on collision at 20 miles an hour in a car. And he goes, it's not good for your neck at all. And he goes, that's why, guys, when they're, have bumped a lot and on the road, 15, 20 years, they can barely walk,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was going to ask you about, there was obviously lots happening at that time, Hogan, Bischoff and that era, but there was also a lot of nostalgia part of that. And one of the bits of nostalgia I really loved was this kind of new iteration of the Four Horsemen. So you, Nigel McGuinness, obviously Desmond Wolfe at the time, AJ and Bobby Roode becoming Fortune under the kind of tutelage of Ric Flair. How did you feel about that?
It was fun because now you have all these different personalities, like in this one group, and we made it work, and we were just having so much fun. And a lot of people didn't know we did this thing called ice, and this is where you put like a Smirnoff Ice under something, and if somebody picks it up, they have to chug it, And I can't tell you how many times we got Flair, on it. like we were to the point where we were scared to like open our bags up because we thought there would be like Smirnoff Ice in our bags, and we had to chug it and stuff. But I mean, I don't know. It's just a group of guys who were just, having fun out there. So,
yeah, an incredible group. So I got to ask you about winning the TNA Championship. So obviously, that's a huge moment for you. You go over one of the biggest legends in our business. Describe the emotion that you kind of felt that night after all of your years of excelling in the tag division, and then you're becoming the king of the mountain in TNA.
I really wasn't sure that they were going to do it until it got closer to bell time. And I just remember like Kurt was hurt. He had messed up his hamstring real bad. And I had this big match like laid out. We had, I think, like 10 minutes or something like that. So Kurt allowed me to like lay the match out and whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. And then I get back there and I start telling him, and he goes, I don't know about that. And I was like, about what? He goes, how about this? How about I just beat you down and you wind up just kicking me out of nowhere and beating me. And then you use the rest of the remaining time to celebrate and do whatever you want to do. And I was like, but I'm not gonna argue with him. I was like, if that's what you want to do, if you think it's gonna work, he goes, guarantee me, I guarantee you, like no one's gonna see it's coming, and it's gonna be an instant surprise. And it's so funny because you can see people like when he's beating me down, they're on their phone, and then as soon as I kick him, they look up, they're like, oh, and I just remember like rolling off, and I said, hey man, I said, thank you very much. He goes, get up, celebrate, you deserve it. And I was like, oh, cool. And I got up, man. And the first thing I did was just look up, and, my dad, he died when I was very young. It's always one of those things. It's like, man, I wish he could be here to see this, because he was such a wrestling fan too, and now see his son go off to win the championship of a big company, he'd have been very proud. So it's just like, man, like I wish you could have been here to see this one,
Yeah, so. It's I lost my dad a couple of years ago, and actually, absolutely, whenever there's a big moment in my life, something really cool happens, he's the first person I want to phone up and tell. And you just always I always have that belief that he's there and he's watching, he's seeing it. I'm sure he was there with you on that night.
There's sometimes I'm like, I hope you ain't watching this. but yeah, hopefully that night he's just like, good job,
Yeah, hopefully just there for the good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So you beat Kurt Angle, you become TNA champion, but then before you know it, you're not TNA champion anymore, because that
I think it was before I even stepped out of the ring. I think I lost before I even got to the mat.
You got 8 days, but that dastardly Bobby Roode turns heel on you, and you're no longer a champion. Did you know going in that you were there to kind of pass it over to Bobby, or did you think you were going to have a run with it?
No, I don't. I thought it would have been like a longer bit of a run, and they actually even talked to me and Bobby about this in the back. So, Eric, he pulled me in the office, and he's like, "This is what we're thinking," and I was just like, "Okay, cool," and how they were laying it out. And he asked me, he goes, look, if you're okay with it, great, we'll go ahead and do it. If you're not, we can figure something else out. I was like, no, like this is what you guys have in store. So, I'll trust you and we'll go along with it. And it really helped Bobby out. And Bobby actually even spoke up. He goes, well, I just want to make sure that Storm is not left behind, like he deserves to be up here too. And they're like, you don't have to worry about it. And they did good with, they did, I forgot what it was, but some kind of tournament thing. And then me and Bobby, so it was Bound for Glory in Arizona, and me and him had a street fight. That was actually supposed to have been for the world. That's supposed to have been when I won back the world heavyweight title. But Austin Aries came in and they decided to put it on him sometime or whatever. And so then me and Bobby just went ahead and just had a regular street fight in Arizona.
Because I thought that you get your win back at Lockdown, that great match you and Bobby had.
Yeah,
that felt like that was what it was. Bit of a storyline, all the build. It was a great build, and I thought that's clearly going to be your big night and your big celebration.
Well, Hogan, title. Like Hogan had talked to me, and he said that he wanted that to be like my win, especially being in Nashville, whatever. But I guess the longer that him and Bischoff talked or whatever, it wound up getting changed, and they wanted to keep Bobby, as a champion, because he had really good heat and momentum as well.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, like, it doesn't bother me not to be champion. The only thing that bothers me is when somebody lies to me. That's the only thing that bothers me.
Yeah, of course. I've got to ask you about, we were talking about him off air a little bit, but we were introduced by a good mutual friend, Gunner, who of course has left wrestling behind for even more noble pursuits and goes by his real name, Chad Lale, these days. What can you tell me about your team of Gunner? Because I always felt that he had, TNA main eventer written all over him.
I mean, he was unreal. Like he was made to be a heavyweight champion. Just the way he looked and carried himself, and I knew Gunner before he even came to TNA and stuff, and on the indie scene and everything. And then he came in and me and him formed a tag team, and then we split up, and then we were doing our things with each other. And man, like I always loved just wrestling with Gunner because, like I said, he wasn't afraid to get hit, and he wasn't afraid to hit you either. And that's what you want. Like, you're not out there trying to kill each other, but you're going to lay it in pretty good so one another can feel it, something. And then when they brought like his dad in, and I hit his dad with the beer bottle. Like his dad was all about it. And I was just like, well, you're over the guardrail. Like, he's like, oh, just pull me over the guardrail. He goes, I don't care. And I was like, I'll take care of you. You don't have to worry or whatever. And then there was a lockdown match that me and Gunner had. I think it was in Miami or somewhere down in Florida. And I remember like John Guback, I forgot how you say his last name, whatever, but he was the head of TNA at the time. And he actually came up to me and Gunner, and he goes, I really need you guys to put on a really good one. He goes, the pay-per-view is lacking and the crowd is dead or whatever. I was like, that's all you got to say. I told Gunner, I said, let's go out there and just beat the crap out of each other. And we did. And the crowd was just going crazy. And, we got back and John just looked at both of us. He goes, that's exactly what I needed. And I thought that they would, move forward with him, to be the heavyweight champion, that he had the briefcase and all this stuff. And then they wound up, I caused him, all this stuff. And, it's just one of those things. And he was one of the original members that I was going to have in the DCC. But then I talked to him and he said that, he got a phone call from WWE. And I said, brother, you got to go there. Like, you got to take your chance to go there and, at least try to have some matches and get your face seen. And you never know what can happen, and so, like, I don't know what happened when he got there, but at least he went.
He did. And amazing to see his life now. I mean, I chat with Chad often. I mean, he's loving his job. He's got such a great relationship with his daughter, great faith life, just good dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a police officer now. And so my brother is actually a sheriff here in the county, next county over from where I live. So I do ride-alongs with him and stuff like that. Ain't no way I'd be a cop. Like, I failed the shooting range 3 times. like people just jump out. Bop, he's like, oh, you can't shoot them. I'm like, they should have jumped out. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And a cop's reaction has to be so fast. Like it's split second. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more wrestling question for you before we kind of move on to what you're doing these days. So, for World Beer Drinking Championship,
yeah,
why did we not see that for longer, and when's it making a comeback?
Man, I don't know. Like me and Eric Young had so much fun on that. Like, we actually got paid to get drunk one day at TNA.
That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a shoot interview like promo we're doing backstage, and me and Eric's drinking or whatever, and I go to get up off the table or whatever, and my hand slips and I hit the table and it knocks me out. I was really knocked out, and Jackie's like, he out. And then they did something and they thought I was just joking. I was out. And then we did like the breathalyzer test, and Eric was like 0.09 and I was like 0.0. No, he was like 1.0 and I was like 0.09 or something. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like I'm feeling it pretty good right now.
So I said in the intro, you're living this kind of second chapter of your life. So obviously you haven't left wrestling behind completely, and you're still training and mentoring and working. But you've really made really great strides as an actor in the last few years. And also you're working as a realtor as well, which
yeah,
no one would have seen coming. So like, what's bringing you the most joy in your life these days?
Man, like acting. Like, I'm just having so much fun on set. And it's one of those things that gives me that same adrenaline rush as walking out in front of 10 or 15,000 people. As soon as the director is like, action, like I get to be this other character and like live in this other world for, however many scenes that I'm doing and stuff. And it's just so much fun to be able to play all these different kind of characters and everything.
What are your favorite kind of roles to play?
Like, of course I get cast in like Western roles. I don't know why, but like action, like I love like action and like horror. Like, man, that's like my favorite stuff to do. But I always get cast as the killer, usually. A lot more action, and I'm starting to get more roles in drama stuff as well.
Shouldn't we'll ever see you in a romantic comedy?
Well, I don't know if this has the Notebook written on it anytime soon, but hey, you never know. I mean,
never know.
Yeah, there's been other people who you wouldn't have thought have done it, and like I am good at comedy,
Yeah.
so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of directors that I got coming up that I'll be working with and stuff, so I'm really looking forward to it.
I mean, I'm fascinated about this other life in the world of property as a realtor. I mean, how many of your clients know you from your wrestling days? And also, if they miss out on the home of their dreams, do you hit them with a "sorry about your damn luck"?
Oh, I do. Oh, you bet I do. But there's some of them that contact me off the internet and stuff, and I show them houses and stuff. And they're just like, "Oh my God, it's really you." I'm like, "Yeah, like, that's who you're talking to." But yeah, I got my license really to kind of just help my wife out because she is the realtor. Like she does all the numbers and all that. I'm just a pretty face.
Yeah.
No, I'm not even. I'm not even that. But I got my license to show houses that I don't think she needs to be showing. Because anybody can contact her off the internet. And there's a place called Bucksnort, Tennessee, and somebody wanted to see a house. I went, yeah, I know that place. You ain't going down there by yourself. But legally, I cannot get out of the car while they're conducting business. I had to sit in the car. So I kind of just sat there, and this guy saw me, and then he just like left and like ghosted her, didn't say anything else. And I went, I'm going to go get my license. And, house. And it's good because like when I'm gone, if she has to go show houses, my brother send one of his deputies just drive by or whatever to make sure she's okay and everything. So yeah, it's scary because a lot of these people you don't know, like you just meet them off the internet, and you go into this house that has nobody in it, so you have to be very careful.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, look, last question for today, and I know we're going to do more of these because this is just a great chat today, James. But when you look back at your incredible wrestling life and all you did, is there one thing that stands out as like your proudest memory?
Man, like, everybody, I don't know, everybody always asks me, what I loved about wrestling. And really, I tell everybody, like, I got into wrestling to make a living. I don't care what 3 letters was in front of the paycheck or whatever. It's just how it is. And I'm very lucky to be able to have lived the life that I've been able to live for 28 years in the wrestling world. And still be able to walk. And I was able to, raise my daughter who's in college now. And then I got 2 boys, 8 and 13, that I'm still able to raise. And it's all because of wrestling. And, when I'm doing these movies and stuff, I'm getting ready to hopefully start working with Shogun Films that is there in the UK with Jonathan Sokot. And, they did movies like, Dr. Plague and Night's Fall and this other horror movie called Halloween. That's actually really cool. But is when I'm hired as an actor on these movies, it's like I have this following, and this director told me, he goes, that's the great thing about you is you have this huge following that's not movie related. So if we're able to get you on a movie set with a known actor, it's going to help your stock raise in the acting world, but you're bringing this whole other audience that's going to come watch it who wouldn't watch it otherwise.
Yeah.
And I tell people, you don't understand how passionate wrestling fans really are. Like if they're with you, like they're ride or die. Like wrestling fans, like even if someone from the outside world comes in and attacks one, all of them just turn and like they'll attack that person because they stick together. They can fight among themselves, but they ain't letting somebody else come in and attack when they're on it. And that's what I love about wrestling fans. It doesn't matter where they're at, whether they're in the States or England or Australia or Japan. Like wrestling fans, even though they might not speak the same language, they stick together. And that's what's helped me in this movie business as well. Is I have this following where they'll watch these movies that I'm in as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, where can my audience keep in touch with you? What are your socials and all your bits? Plug away, James.
Yeah, I just do Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever it's called today. Tomorrow it'll be called something else. At James Storm Brand. I don't have Facebook, so if you're talking to a James Storm on Facebook, it's fake. I actually had someone at a meet and greet tell me that they were talking to me on Facebook. And I went, well, I don't have a Facebook. And they go, are you sure? I'm like, Well, you're talking to me right now, and I'm telling you, I don't have one. So, but and I don't understand why people do the fake stuff, but there are a lot of fakes out there. So people got too much time on their hands.
Yeah,
so, but
absolutely.
yeah, at James Storm Brand on Twitter and Instagram.
Well, give James a follow if you're not already. Make sure you follow him, the legitimate one, and not the fake Cowboy.
Yeah. Watching fake cowboys out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I always do a couple of thank yous at the end, James. So firstly, to my producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Productions. Whenever I say that, his little face pops up here, which I always really like. He always brings wrestling life to life. Thank you to all my audience for joining us. But most importantly, obviously, the one and only Cowboy James Storm. Thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys very much, man. Hopefully we can do this again in another 10 years. Well, hopefully it's before then.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll still be looking great in 10 years, my friend.
I don't know about that, but we'll try. I had to use some more just for men.
Well, that's it for today. Until next time, please be good to one another. Pay it forward if you can. This has been Wrestling Life. I've been Ben Veal, and I'm out of here. See ya.